David, Council President, committee members, and participants. We are now live.
Thank you, and good morning to everyone. We're going to get started now, but before we begin the public hearing, I will make the following announcement. Due to the continuing threat to public health from COVID-19, City Council committees are currently meeting remotely. We are using Microsoft Teams to make these remote hearings possible. Instructions for how the public may view and offer public testimony at public hearings of council committees are included in the public hearing notices that are published in the Daily News, Inquirer, and Legal Intelligencer prior to the hearings, and can also be found on phlcouncil.com. I now note that the hour has come. Mr. McDermott, will you please call the roll to take attendance? And members that are in attendance, please indicate that you are present. Mr. McDermott?
Councilmember Bass?
Good morning. I am present. Good morning, Mr. President and colleagues.
Councilmember Brooks? Councilmember Driscoll? Councilmember Gautier?
Good morning, Council President and colleagues present.
Good morning.
Councilmember Gilmore Richardson?
Good morning, Council President. Good morning, colleagues. I am present.
Good morning.
Councilmember Harity?
Good morning, everyone. I am here.
Good morning.
Councilmember Johnson?
Good morning, Council President. Good morning, colleagues. I am here.
Good morning.
Councilmember Jones?
I am present. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Councilmember Lozada?
Good morning, everyone. I'm present.
Good morning.
Councilmember O'Neill?
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Councilmember Phillips?
Good morning, everyone. I am present.
Good morning.
Councilmember Squilla? Councilmember Thomas?
Good morning, Council colleagues. Good morning, Council President. I'm here.
Good morning.
And Councilmember Vaughn?
Good morning, everyone present.
Good morning. Thank you very much. A quorum of the committee is present, and the hearing is now called to order. This is the continued public hearing of the Committee of the Whole regarding bills number 230144, 230145, 230146, 230147, 230148, 230149, and resolution number 230162. Mr. McDermott, please read the titles of the bills and resolution.
Bill number 230144, an ordinance to adopt a capital program for the 6 fiscal years 2024 to 2029 inclusive. Bill number 230145, an ordinance to adopt a fiscal 2024 capital budget. Bill number 230146, an ordinance adopting the operating budget for fiscal year 2024. Bill number 230147, an ordinance amending Chapter 19-1500 of the Philadelphia Code entitled Wage and Net Profits Tax by revising certain tax rates under certain terms and conditions. Bill number 230148, an ordinance amending Chapter 19-2800 of the Philadelphia Code entitled Pennsylvania Intergovernmental Cooperation Authority Tax on Wages and Net Profits to provide for the continuation of the tax and to make other conforming changes, all under certain terms and conditions. Bill number 230149, an ordinance amending Chapter 19-2600 of the Philadelphia Code entitled Business Income and Receipts Taxes by revising certain tax rates under certain terms and conditions. And resolution number 230162, providing for the approval by the Council of the City of Philadelphia a revised 5-year financial plan for the City of Philadelphia covering fiscal years 2024 through 2028 and incorporating revised changes with respect to fiscal year 2023, which is to be submitted by the mayor to the Pennsylvania Intergovernmental Cooperation Authority pursuant to the Intergovernmental Cooperation Agreement authorized by an ordinance of this council approved by the mayor on January 3rd, 1992 by and between the city and the authority.
Thank you, Mr. McDermott. Today, we continue the public hearing of the Committee of the Whole to consider the bills read by the clerk that constitute proposed operating and capital spending measures for fiscal 2024, a capital program, and a forward-looking capital plan for fiscal 2024 through fiscal 2029. This morning, we will hear testimony from the Chief Administration Officer, Office of Procurement, and the Office of Human Resources. This afternoon, we'll hear from the Office of Innovation, of Technology, and Planning and Development. Mr. McDermott, the first person to testify is?
First person to testify for the administration is Stephanie Tipton, Chief Administrative Officer.
Thank you very much, and good morning.
Good morning, Council President Clark and members of City Council. I'm Stephanie Tipton, Chief Administrative Officer. I'm pleased to provide testimony on my office's fiscal year 2024 operating budget. Joining me today are members of my executive team, including Aviva Teva, Chief of Staff, Dwayne Gordon, our first Deputy Chief Administrative Officer, Leanna Dragaman, Director of Strategic Design, Melissa Andre, the Executive Director of the Office of Administrative Review, and Tracy Bryant, Deputy Director of Talent Management. I'm also joined by commissioners from our clusters department, including Procurement, Records, Human Resources, and the Office of Innovation Technology, who will also be providing testimony throughout the course of the day today. The Office of the Chief Administrative Officer, or the CAO, centers our work around three strategic pillars: investing in human capital to build a culture of trust, respect, and operational excellence in city government, delivering transformational projects with measurable and equitable outcomes, strengthening administrative functions across departments to leave the city better than we found it. We advance these strategies through our partnership across various city departments, including the Office of Human Resources, and by supporting the departments within the CAO portfolio, the Office of Innovation Technology, Procurement, and Records. I want to start by thanking the commissioners of these departments and everyone who works in the CAO, who are all dedicated and talented public servants. This entire team has worked incredibly hard to make city government work better on behalf of our employees, departments, and the public we serve. Since the creation of the Chief Administrative Officer position in 2016, the Office of the CAO has elevated the important and critical role internal administrative functions play in the overall functioning of city government. While there's still work to be done, I'm very proud of what this office has accomplished, working in partnership with our cluster departments. This includes such things as launching a modern and user-friendly phila.gov website, creating digital solutions that make it easier for all of us to do our work and for vendors to find contracting opportunities and to get paid, as well as working in partnership with this body to modernize outdated aspects of the city charter to improve our procurement and hiring processes and outcomes. We've developed tools to support diversity and inclusion within our hiring practices, in particular for exempt employees, and grown our professional development offerings citywide. Additionally, we've worked to support and grow innovation across city departments through the Office of Operations Transformation Fund and by launching the city's first ever service design studio, which partners with residents, frontline staff, and leaders to design accessible, equitable, and trauma-informed services that honor the diverse needs of Philadelphians. And lastly, we've strengthened and modernized operations in the Office of Administrative Review. I would also be remiss if I did not thank Council President Clark and other members of this body for your partnership as we identify additional opportunities to attract and retain a talented and diverse workforce through the Special Committee on Recruitment and Retention of Municipal Workers. In the final year of the Kenney administration, the CAO is focused on sustaining and building upon these successes with continued citywide investments in human resources, transformative project delivery, and effective administration. Specifically, by early FY2024, the 29 projects funded through the Operations Transformation Fund, or the OTF for short, will be fully implemented. Through this $10 million financial investment, the CAO has been able to support projects in 28 different departments, which have focused on transforming both internal and external processes to make service delivery more efficient and equitable. From a reforestation hub with Parks and Rec to expanding translations of the phila.gov website through the Office of Immigrant Affairs, the projects supported by OTF will have a demonstrable and lasting impact for years to come. As the Operations Transformation Fund comes to an end, we will continue to provide technical assistance to department-led projects in order to accelerate and improve project delivery citywide and create additional opportunities for the city to directly compensate the residents who engage with city government. Additionally, through the work of our PHL Service Design Studio and in partnership with the Office of Civic Engagement and Volunteer Service, in FY2024, we will launch the Equitable Community Engagement Toolkit, a multi-year project that will provide city staff, community groups, and community members with resources and training on how city government thinks about, plans for, and facilitates equitable engagement with staff and residents. This important work has engaged over 150 stakeholders, including city staff, community-based practitioners from local community groups, and city residents in deep qualitative research that has been used to inform the foundation of the toolkit. We will continue to support the OPAL project, which will replace the city's legacy financial and supply chain systems and expand the use of the vendor payment portal, which digitizes and automates the vendor invoice submission process. We will also continue to support a variety of contract and procurement-related reform activities, such as launching a new portal to streamline and capture demographic and workforce information from city contractors and redesign request for proposal and bidding documents, which will make it easier for vendors to respond to city contracting opportunities. Lastly, we will continue to advance projects and initiatives that support our workforce in a variety of ways. Most notably, in FY2024, the city is excited to be joining other large employers in the region as part of the SEPTA Key Advantage program, which will provide free transit on SEPTA for city employees. Additionally, the CAO will implement new professional development training targeted to city managers and supervisors with a focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion, as well as launching a new employee engagement tool. We will also conclude the Employee Protections Project, which aims to improve transparency, accessibility, and the efficiency of city offices that address employee workplace concerns in order to make government a more safe, inclusive, and responsive environment for employees at all levels, particularly for employees with marginalized identities. This work will inform the creation of the city's first ever Office of the Ombudsperson, which will open in early FY24 and will provide another resource for employees who may need support from a confidential, impartial party to navigate and address workplace issues. Lastly, I also want to highlight the tremendous work of the Records Department, since they're not required to testify today. In particular, their efforts to combat deed fraud and tangled titles, much of which has been in partnership with this body and other elected officials. The department rolled out its first ever citywide community engagement and education campaign for deed fraud and expanded the Deed Fraud Guard platform for notaries, who will now receive an alert if their name appears as a notary on a recorded deed. And in FY24, the department will launch an online public safety report portal, which will make it easier for the public to access police, fire, and emergency medical service incident reports. I also want to applaud the department for making the city archives more accessible and engaging to the public at large through innovative programming, including an upcoming tribute to the Philadelphia's historic 7th Ward, which will tell compelling stories through experiential place-based art installations. So, now for the numbers. Our proposed fiscal 2024 general fund budget, which totals $17,031,408, which is an increase of $2,061,580, reflects our continued investment in our strategic pillars. Significantly, $9 million of our FY24 operating budget will go towards implementing the SEPTA Key Advantage program. This new investment, in addition to our work on current and ongoing projects, will continue to advance the CAO's core mission to work with city departments to transform their service delivery, provide people-centered solutions, and strengthen administrative functions to better serve Philadelphia residents and employees. Mr. President and members of City Council joining us today, this concludes my remarks. We're happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ms. Tipton. And I want to thank you so much for your participation, you and the team, and Mr. Zaccagni and all of the folks working on the document that I think will be released today, tomorrow. On
very, very soon.
yeah, retention and attraction. Some very good ideas in terms of making sure that we fill the gap of employees. I understand that there's shortly going to be a solicitation. Just did a Patty Jackson interview on the radio about, I guess it's the city's entity, what's that on JFK, the preparation for the test we're going to be doing, sponsored by the city to make sure that people are prepared to take the test. So that's a good thing.
Yeah.
We definitely need to make sure that people are aware of that. Got a couple of questions. You in your testimony, you highlight the Opal system, which will modernize many back-end processes in City Hall. We know that is, traditionally the problem that nobody sees, but it is a problem in terms of us being able to move things. Can you just explain a little more detail on what that will do?
Sure. So the Opal project is it's a long-term, multi-year project to redesign and replace the city's legacy financial grants, procurement, and supply chain systems, which some of you may be aware, some of those systems are from the 90s, so very old systems. We have recognized that this has been a risk for us as a city, and we will be replacing that with a leading ERP based software solution. So we have selected a solution provider, Workday, and we will be using that software to replace those systems. The goal of doing that is a few things. One, it will decrease cycle time. So, we'll have a more modern system that will allow us to get payments, get contracts, get other types of sort of administrative financial supply chain processes done quicker and faster. It will also allow us to provide better data and reporting on all of those functions. Right now, it is quite a challenge for us to provide good intelligence and reporting from the systems that we have in place. We do it, but it's challenging. And so this will be able to give us more real-time data. So, I think for all of us, this is something that's been a long time in the making. We anticipate that we will start rolling out the system sometime in 2026. It's going to be a phased deployment, so we'll be doing sort of 3 rounds of deployment of the system itself. So it's not going to be, a big bang, if you will. So we'll roll on a few departments at a time, which will give us the opportunity to see how it's working, fix any bugs, and then roll on another set of departments. So, we are definitely looking forward to seeing this happen. We are almost at the stage of bringing on an implementer who is going to work with the city to actually implement the software that we've selected at this point. But it's going to be a great, modern, good change for the city.
Yeah, good. We like modern.
Yeah.
The SEPTA Key Advantage Pilot Program, very exciting, quite interesting scenario that was brought up. Look forward to getting people back on the public transit.
Mm-hmm.
So we are not hit with a request for a significant fare hike increase, which is a real concern, or elimination of several routes, which I understand is the alternative proposal. I know that we're going to be involved, and I guess you'll be running point from the city side.
Yes.
And the assumption is that there will be an analysis of the program and its productivity in terms of getting people on the train.
Yes.
Is this something that, based on, review, I don't know the timeline on the review, that we could look at a long-term commitment beyond the pilot program?
Sure. Yeah. So we've committed to 2 years of funding for the program. Based on our conversations with SEPTA and how this has worked in other large employers in the region, we will be able to pretty quickly start getting very good data on who's using it, what routes they're using, and just the overall utilization. And I think that will definitely help us to inform, future, rollout of the program. But starting off, it will be available to all city employees, both full-time and part-time. It'll probably launch sometime in early FY2024. We have to work out with our labor partners the labor agreements that will have to go into place, because this is a new benefit that we'll be providing. But we have no indication that will be much of an issue. So, yeah, I think very quickly we'll be able to get some data to inform, future years of the program.
Essentially put it in the 5-year plan, right?
Yeah.
My last question, before I turn it over to my colleagues. Earlier conversations around the public safety officers and a lot of hoopla around, and people are excited that we're finally rolling them out. We have, I believe, 20 in the first class, based on the requirements that they cover both traffic-related issues as it relates to Center City and potentially some other high-traffic congested areas. Also, the notion that they will be taking point on abandoned car removal, i.e. writing of citations, it's clear that the 20 individuals are not going to be enough to cover that issue. And in that conversation, I guess in the first week, we talked about the ability to hire and deploy public safety officers. So assuming that this council puts some additional dollars in the budget, and that's a pretty big assumption, likely assumption that to hire the next class, what's the timeline on being able to get those folks up and running? Because I understand we did have a significant number of applicants for the first class. Is this something that we can likely see an expansion beyond the 20 in early FY2024?
Yes, I mean, I think once the budget is confirmed, we can start moving forward with the hiring process for those roles. It typically takes around 100 days for civil service positions to get people on board. So once we have the ability to do that budgetarily, we can get moving on getting those people on board. And I think by the number of applicants, hopefully if there's a wide enough pool, we should be able to fill the positions without too much trouble. That's the hope, right? But yeah, I mean, I think once the budget's approved, we can get moving pretty quickly on that.
Okay. Why does it take 100 days to bring somebody online?
Right. So, I mean, it takes us about 30 days in terms of the test itself. So once the announcement is closed for us to get the list generated, we have to go through the applications, make sure, the folks that are eligible, we create those lists. That takes us about 30 days. And then we sort of make those lists available to departments. Then departments really have the time there that they're going to be hiring, if there's any sort of capacity there. If we're bringing on a lot of people, we have to make sure that we have the capacity to, interview, get people through, any sort of, the medical evaluation unit. And so we have, especially when we're bringing on bigger classes of employees, we do put more resources towards getting them through the process a little bit faster than that. I mean, that's, I don't think that's too atypical for government. I know we would like to get it even faster, but, when we've looked at, government across the board, that is a pretty typical time in terms of, getting the list prepared, getting people through the interviews, and then actually getting them through the hiring process.
Yeah. So I'm assuming that that's not the typical timeline for non-government related entities. This seems like a long time. If you need a person for a position, you've taken 100 days, particularly if that person has a certain skill set, that person is likely going to find a job somewhere else. Is that something structurally in the government that requires that it takes a 100-day timeline, or is it just the nature of the beast? Is that government just takes a long time because it's government? I mean, that's not a real reason.
Sure. I mean, there's certainly certain regulations in place that sort of dictate some of the process itself. There's certain things that we have to do that we can't really necessarily get around by regulation or law. Certainly we want to make sure that we're getting people through the process as quickly as possible. And so we have been really pushing on that time frame and working very closely with HR to identify ways to improve time to hire. I mean, I think realistically, given some of the staffing and things internally that we've struggled with, I think that's where we are now. But certainly once we have staff in place and the capacity available, we can move people through the process a little bit faster than that, for sure.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Chair recognizes Councilman Harity.
Good morning, Council President. Good morning, Ms. Tipton.
Good morning.
I only have two questions, quick. In pillar number 2 of your written testimony, you indicated that a goal was to streamline the application process for city administered benefits. Will this be complete in time for the open enrollment in December of 23? And what is the timetable to complete the administrative functions in Pillar 3, specifically templates for professional service, RFPs, and the use of vendor payment portal?
Sure. So the reference to the streamlined benefit application process, that's actually for the public. And so we have, over the last year or two, been working to streamline the application process for a number of city administered benefit programs. And what that means is sort of creating almost like a common application for those programs. And so residents don't need to fill out multiple applications when they're applying for, BSRP, or if they're applying for homestead exemption, et cetera, or other programs in the water department, that they can complete one sort of streamlined application. And so we have been working through Dwayne Gordon, our first Deputy Chief Administrative Officer. His team has been working with a number of stakeholders across all of these various groups to come together and create what we call a minimal viable product by the end of the fiscal year. And what that is a prototype of what that application could look like. We'll have an opportunity to test it and see how it works. And then if it's something that we think has promise, then we can start expanding it next fiscal year and really bringing it more broadly to the public. In terms of the templates that you talked about for RFPs, bidding, we should, by the end of this fiscal year, hopefully in the next month or so, be releasing the redesigned request for proposal template. That is, the redesign was really focused on making that much easier to navigate for potential contractors. So making it more plain language, easy to follow, really explaining some of the more legalese types of things that are in our contracting departments. And then also making it easier for departments internally to complete those documents. And we worked very closely with the Government Performance Lab at the Kennedy School at Harvard to build in more outcomes-based language and deliverables within the RFP document. So hopefully not only is it easier for the vendor to respond to it, but it's also getting us better outcomes on our contracts themselves. In terms of the rest of the bidding documents, hopefully that is something that we can tackle in the next fiscal year. But definitely by this fiscal year, we'll have a new RFP template that we can roll out for professional services specifically, which is, the vast majority of the contracts that we do as a city.
Thank you. That's good for me. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Chair recognizes Councilman Jones. Councilman Jones?
Yes,
Hey.
Mr. President, I'm going to pass.
You want?
I'm
You
okay.
good?
I'm okay. Yes.
You good?
Yes.
You don't, Councilman, I just want to make.
Yes, I'm going to pass, Mr. President. I'm good. Can you hear me?
CP, you're on mute.
My fault. I'm sorry, Councilman. I got you. Thank you. Chair recognizes Councilman Thomas.
Good morning, Council President. Good morning, everybody. I'm going to be brief. Just a couple questions. Throughout the course of budget hearings, I've been listening to departments and recognizing that, we do have employment issues across the board. I specifically want to know the marketing plan. What is the marketing plan as it relates to promoting city jobs? How much money do we plan to spend and on what platforms?
Sure. I may ask Mike Zaccagni, our HR director, to speak to that if he is on. And I know they'll have an opportunity to speak more during their budget testimony. But we have made additional investments both this fiscal year and next fiscal year on this particular thing. But I'll have Mike speak to the specifics of those.
Yes, Councilman, thank you for your question. I also appreciated your input during the 5-year plan on this, and it's something that I've met with the mayor's office of communications, as well as some people internal. As I think I mentioned last time, we have several $100,000, and I know that it's probably not enough, and there may be some additional resources coming out of the Recruitment and Retention Committee. But after our discussions of the 5-year plan, we're sort of looking at broadening this out, and we've talked to the mayor's office about getting some evergreen messaging up on our main channels to push people to our current channels that we have, I believe is Twitter, Facebook. Talk to the mayor's office about Instagram. What we want to really do is get somebody on board that can really help us and give us the expertise that we lack here so that we can get a marketing strategy together, utilizing all avenues, including SEPTA, including social media, looking at that so that they can provide that assistance so that we can reach more candidates. We are utilizing social media, but no, we need to do a lot more in that area. So the goal here is to bring somebody on board that will provide that expertise that we don't currently have within the office. And right now, I think there's about $360,000, but again, we're still waiting for the final recommendations from the Recruitment and Retention Committee to come out.
When I think about most of the nuisance issues that I listen to people complain about, and I know you're going to go into HR stuff a little bit later, but when I think about most of the nuisance issues that I hear people complain about, a lot of them, are not the actual commissioner or the person that's leading the department. A lot of these issues are they're hiring issues, and I just the sense of urgency that is needed around hiring people to address a lot of the issues that we're facing as a city, I just don't understand. I don't understand why we don't throw many more resources at this particular problem and give people an opportunity to be successful as it relates to their departments and what they're responsible for doing. I'll stop right there, but it's just, it just reminds me of prevention-based programming. Last year during this budget cycle in the fall, I screamed and hollered about prevention-based programming, and now we're seeing the spike in crime, which has been happening for some time, but the only demographic we can't get a hold of is young people. So sometimes I wonder, and I know I'm just ranting right now, and I won't do this again today, so I'm going to get it out the way now. Sometimes I wonder, do people really listen to the things that we're saying and we're talking about? We all have lived experiences. We all represent people in the city of Philadelphia. We're all public servants. I just wonder why our ideas and recommendations aren't good enough. They never seem to land. And in 3 months, I'm going to be talking to constituents who are going to be telling me complaints about issues, and I'm going to be saying the same thing. Well, 1 out of 5 jobs in the city of Philadelphia is not filled. We're already saying we have issues as it relates to the timeline to hire people. We're already saying we need to spend more money as it relates to advertising and getting staff on. I just wonder, what does it take to adopt ideas and to move with a sense of urgency? And that's a rhetorical question. Thank you, Council President. Thank you, colleagues.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman, actually, in the report that was referenced earlier, you will actually see, and it should be coming to the members, the first draft, make sure that everyone has an opportunity to review. A couple of those questions will actually be answered, particularly around the money side, the recommendations around the marketing, and a couple of other things. They're pretty interesting things. So that should be hopefully out by no later than the end of the week. Dealing with some of the graphics and all the other aspects. So the contributions from the members, to Ms. Tipton and Mr. Sakagny, and actually Lindendorf and Ella, old former member of the administration, Captain McCoy, dealing with all the other stuff. We had a lot of good people, President Garrett, giving us good information. So you'll see that very shortly.
Thank you, Council President. Thank you to everybody who participated in that. Just recognize the sense of urgency. And, sometimes we have these frustrating things that happen throughout the course of the day and around the city. When we listen to some of the issues that we have as government, it's like, this is what we can do. this is the part we can do something about. We can't do something about every single issue that we have in the city, but the least we could do something about is this particular issue as it relates to government services. So thank you, Council President. Thank you for everybody involved. I'm looking forward to reading that report.
Thank you, Councilman. Is there anyone other questions for this witness at this time? There being none. Thank you, Ms. Tipton. Thank you very much. You may want to hang on until we finish this group. I believe next up we have Procurement. Officer of Procurement, are you teed up and ready to testify?
Yes.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, Council President and members of City Council. I am Monique Neesmith Joyner, the Commissioner for the Procurement Department. Joining me today are Deputies LaShonda Tompkins and Deputy Commissioner Janera Barroso. I'm pleased to provide testimony on the Procurement Department's fiscal year 2024 operating budget. I'll get right into the plans for the fiscal year. The Inventory Disposal and Control Unit in particular, in preparation for the city's new ERP system, the OPAL system, the Inventory Disposal and Control Unit will continue to collaborate with the OPAL project management team to develop a process to manage office materials, supplies, and equipment. The unit will proactively engage departments concerning the management, evaluation, and disposal or auctioning of surplus items at their locations. We will work with the Office of Innovation and Technology's Asset Management Team to supply new and transfer existing IT equipment from department inventory to OIT's inventory. Finally, we will aid the Service Supply and Equipment Unit in their efforts to procure a new e-waste contract that will result in lower e-waste recycling costs and simplify logistics. In terms of administration, Procurement promotes contracting best practices via training and development sessions. We will assess and engage city agencies that are ready, willing, and able to establish departmental subject matter experts dedicated to contracting, compliance, and data analysis. We are establishing a peer-to-peer support model for knowledge sharing with the goal of building capacity across city agencies. This initiative will enable departments to better prepare and communicate their purchasing needs. In terms of vendor engagement, Procurement will continue to market city contracting opportunities using social media, partnering organizations, the local chambers, and networking events to share information related to upcoming contracting opportunities and resources. Through these efforts, Procurement expects to attract and encourage local and diverse businesses to participate and bid on city contracts. Vendor engagement initiatives will also continue to explore techniques for creating a more user-friendly and customer-oriented environment for existing and potential vendors. And before I close, I just would like to recognize the procurement staff, our procurement department, which is a tenacious group of talented individuals who serve as a resource to all city agencies. I want to publicly thank the team for their dedication and flexibility as we work toward greater efficiencies for all stakeholders. My deputies and I are happy to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner, and thank you for being here to testify along with your, as you say, your tenacious staff. Look forward to having that conversation. Had a couple of quick ones. And I think you can recall, I think you were there to chime in. We had this conversation around procurement of equipment and particularly the Department of Recreation.
Yes.
And we have this challenge when we as council members ask for certain equipment per the request of the community and the local advisory councils at the rec center, things like swings, basketball standards, hoops, backboards. My understanding that there's a certain standard per se type of equipment that we order, all similar, all regulation, but yet we do it on a case-by-case basis that causes the timeline to be very long. Just to order a basketball standard and backboard And I'm told it could take as long as 3, 4, 5 months just to get it up and running. And by then the summer is over, season's over. And the question was, if you can recall, why don't we just purchase these in bulk? One, probably be less costly. Two, more efficient in terms of being able to deploy those out at rec centers, and so people can have these activities in a timely way. On that hearing, it sounded like everybody kind of agreed that that was a good idea, and particularly talking to the recreation commissioner. You recall that conversation?
Yes.
All right. So let me ask you this question. Has there been any follow-up, since we were led to believe, at least I was led to believe in my mind, that there was going to be some follow-up conversation to talk about the possibility of moving towards that, buying in bulk and having things readily available wherever necessary?
Sure. So the follow-up that was done in procurement was to confirm that we do actually have a cooperative contract in place with lot pricing already established. When we had that conversation a few weeks ago, I mentioned that I would look into and ensure that we had a lot price available, and we in fact do. So in terms of the contract, we are as a city able to purchase in bulk if we need to. Now, in terms of follow-up across the DPP and Parks and Rec, that conversation has not yet happened. And I believe that, they just have to look into lining up, their projects and understanding how much we would order in bulk at one time, at any one given time, and how much we can store at any one given time.
Okay, that's good to hear that you are on point, and we have an existing ability and I guess a contract with those. And it's just a matter of, because I'm actually going to be with the rec commissioner at 1:00. See why they haven't followed up on their side. So basically, they just need to give you all a sense of the likelihood of and the scope of what would need to be ordered with the contractor that we already have in place. All right. That's good.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
You referenced briefly in your testimony about the opportunities in terms of procurement and advertisement for procurement, and you talked about various organizations, social media, local chambers, and networking events. Can you? And you don't have to give this to me now, but can you give us a breakdown on the responses from those various entities? Who do we get the most significant response? Giving an example, this has nothing to do with you. It's actually a PIDC contract. So this is big vacant lot owned by the city of Philadelphia, over in the part of North Philadelphia, actually on a significant thoroughfare. We realized it was owned by the city, and we thought that this is something that somebody may want to buy, because we literally just built a brand new senior citizens facility across the street. Okay. And contacted PIDC, and they said, well, we don't put up signs anymore. So I'm a little old school, we used to put the big sign up on the lot, available, right? That's what we used to do. They said, oh, we don't do that anymore. We do it in our social media or our email, whatever they use, right? It's not a sign. And lo and behold, we got no responses, right? Meanwhile, right down the street, somebody put up a sign on a privately owned lot, old school, boom. They got a number of inquiries, because I asked, and they said, oh, no, we got a bunch of people to buy that. So I'm asking that to say, what has been your practice, and what has been the response that you've gotten in terms of how you advertise properties or advertise opportunities?
Advertising opportunities. So we of course advertise primarily our opportunities on our website through Contract Hub, which is our consolidated site where all opportunities, professional services, concessions, public works, and SS&E are listed. So we get great response through our consolidated site, and then we also have the individual sites, PHO Contracts as well as eContract Philly. But in terms of our outreach, my department participates in the monthly Doing Business with the City opportunity, where diverse vendors come to either virtually or in person and receive information about opportunities for the city that are available in the city and how to access them. I also personally go to community events either through local chambers or other small business opportunities to speak and share information about the procurement process and opportunities that are available. So we use a mix of, in-person, social, well, not really social media, but I'll say the internet, as well as any other vendor engagement opportunities that we may have. And we do receive great response when I talk about, I know Councilman Thomas is going to ask about our LBE, and we have had some great response from our mailing, actually, actual postcards through the doors of businesses to attract them and make them aware of our local business certification, which is also a pathway into contracting with the city.
Okay. All right. You talk. Councilman Thomas is teed up. The next line of question as you anticipated. So the belief is that government takes too long. This is just a general question. So I'm happy to hear during the course of actually last year and this year and our budget hearings that there's some acknowledgement that we can do better. Are there things within your department that you are doing or you plan on doing to move the process of procurement along a little more efficiently, quickly for the layperson out in the neighborhood who are actually interested in doing work with the city of Philadelphia?
Yes. So we have, I'll say in this last year, two things that we've done that I think will have a significant impact in our metrics, our upcoming metrics. And that is one, that we have re-engineered some of our staff processes and our staffing structure to improve efficiencies within our own processing time and how we manage and handle the letting of opportunities in the award process. The other is that we've been working closely with the Office of Economic Opportunity and the CAO regarding the response rate for range setting, which is part of the contracting and procurement process. So recently, and I believe Stephanie may have touched on this, the CAO developed a form for the Office of Economic Opportunity, actually an online form for departments to complete and submit to OEO and to request ranges for each opportunity. That was formally done through email and, could have taken a bit longer, but we've seen a significant increase in terms of the turnaround time for range setting. So those are just two examples of things that we've done really in the past, I would say 9 months to create efficiencies across our processing time and our operations. The other thing that I would say is that we are utilizing a monthly contract resource group meeting to engage citywide departmental staff. We have about anywhere between 150 to 190 attendees each month, and that is a citywide opportunity for us, procurement, I'll say those across the procurement process and procurement stakeholders, to provide information, tips, ask any questions of staff that are in departments that are engaged in procurement transactions. So it's about, education and access, providing the information. And again, that peer-to-peer model that I spoke of in my testimony, that is also a result of the contract resource group meeting, where we're going to have those who are, I'll say, moderate to advanced, people who have historically been with the city and engaged in procurement, mentoring those who may be novice, just coming in to procurement and procurement transactions with the city, so that they can mentor each other and support each other at the department level with moving things through on a more efficient basis as well.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Chair recognizes, I think, Councilman Jones, queued up first. Councilman Jones? Okay. We'll move on to Councilman Thomas and we'll come back to Councilman Jones.
Okay.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Commissioner. Just a couple quick questions. First of all, thank you to you and your team for all you do. Just around Keep It Local. Of course, you know, Keep It Local is the legislation that we passed a few years back to make sure that we were investing in Philadelphia as we come out of the pandemic. And so I'm wondering what was the benchmark that we set from last year's budget? What is the benchmark that we're setting for this year? And how did we do last year? And how do you anticipate doing this year?
Okay, thank you for the question. And thank you for teeing it up in the 5-year plan. We are ready to respond. So the goal is 46%. The goal that is an increase from the prior year. We also this year have 53% of our contracts, so we have exceeded the goal. 53% of our procurement contracts have been awarded to local business entities. As our professional services contracts, 69% of those contracts have been awarded to businesses with a 191 zip. So we are trending more toward pre-pandemic levels in terms of our award. The calendar year of 2021 truly was a anomaly and a result of the COVID crisis that we were in.
That's it. Great work. Thank you, Council President.
Okay.
Thank you to you and your team for all you do. Those numbers are amazing. And hopefully we put that in the package of things that we prepare for the next administration to make sure that we stay on that trajectory, because that's how we invest in Philadelphia. So thank you. Thank you for all you do.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Chair recognizes Councilman Jones.
Thank you, Mr. President. Commissioner, that is great news. And I'm excited to hear that we are buying locally. I want to ask a couple of questions. I'm going back to my time pre-OEO to my MBEC days. You'd have to Google what that is, Minority Business Enterprise Council.
Yep.
When I worked with then Angela Dow Burton on these matters. So my question is, are we planning to do a disparity study to make sure that the goals and ranges that we set are like lawful? And I want to get a sense that we are, in fact, going to statistically validate the ranges that we set.
Okay. So, Councilman Jones, I appreciate the question. Unfortunately, that question is better suited for the Commerce Department. OEO sits in the Commerce Department, and the disparity study is issued by that entity. So I'm not able to answer that question.
Okay, but you should, however, know the answer, because everything that they set, we will be sued for. But I'll table that and wait for them. The second question I would have is that on our supply chain issues, how are you responding to that? And is there been, to what degree, inflation impacted what the cost of doing business in the city of Philadelphia is?
So there absolutely have been inflation impacts in the cost of doing business in the city. There are a couple things that we're doing. We've worked with the law department to consider utilizing more cooperative contracts when available and when applicable. Cooperative contracts, what that does, it allows us to utilize an existing contract with another government agency that already has terms and conditions and, most importantly, pricing locked in. And we're able to utilize that contract for specific goods and services or commodities. In particular, not necessarily services, but for commodities. So we utilize that when it's available to us. We also have program purchasing, which is basically where we put out a solicitation and we welcome vendors, of course, to bid. We select a group of we establish a group of pre-qualified vendors for a particular commodity. And when departments are in need of a particular good, they solicit just that pre-qualified group of vendors for their for that particular commodity, and they are able to select the lowest pricing from that pool of pre-qualified vendors. The other thing that we're doing is really monitoring the marketplace through our small order purchasing mechanism. So let's say, for instance, that we have a citywide contract in place and we receive notice from the vendor that they want to increase their pricing by, I don't know, let's say 24%. And I'm just using that as the first number that came to my mind. So we are looking at, we may request the department to issue a SOP, a small order purchase, to see if vendors that do respond to that have pricing that is at or lower than the citywide contracted vendor. So before we say yes, that we'll move to that 24% increase, we survey the marketplace to see, what other pricing may be available. One of the other things that we did was we adjusted, for inflation purposes, the CPI cap that was in our terms and conditions to allow us to have more flexibility in terms of our turnaround time when we do need to increase a price on a contract.
So we used to call that cooperative purchasing, piggyback purchasing, and I'm assuming that's what entities from the state, like if we were buying salt, we could piggyback purchase off of the state's Department of Transportation. Am I in the right?
Yeah, it's something similar. Yeah. So we could use the state, but we could also use other government agencies or higher ed agencies as well.
So the one area that comes to mind, when we ran into shortages of PPEs during the pandemic, is that the kind of purchasing that we're forward thinking? God forbid we ever have to do it again, but we should be better prepared to know where to get those commodities from going forward.
Yeah, so for your example for PPE, that is one where we created that purchasing program that I referenced, where we had a group of pre-qualified vendors that we knew had the capacity and ability to respond to the city's demand for PPE products. So that is one instance where we did create a program so that city agencies could independently purchase what they needed from that pre-qualified group.
So I like your flexibility to go from a requirements contract that might want to give a substantial increase in price and look to other small purchase orders that can provide that same commodity cheaper. That should save us some money.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so
the current economic status that we're in has forced us, to move toward more flexible procurement measures.
My last inquiry will be on the fuel purchase for gasoline. How long is that requirements contract, and what year are we in within that price structure?
Janera, would you happen to know that offhand?
Yes, we're about to come into our last year of a renewal period, and we'll be putting that back out. I would say generally it will go back out by the next fiscal year. So I would say by March of next year.
So my question becomes, what are we paying now? What did you lock us in for now? And what is the market going for in the real world?
Well, that contract for fuel was done prior to the pandemic. So we are currently locked into 2019 pricing.
And what is that level, just to give context to how much we are actually saving?
Yep. Can we get back to you with that? We would have to look in the system for that.
And what I would appreciate is, in addition to that, and provide it to the president, what the inflationary factor of construction for public works has been, and supplies, services, and equipment.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilman. One question: Are you all involved? Your department involved in the contract for the triplex?
Yes.
So is it directly through procurement
Yes.
or is it
Yes.
PPD? Okay.
Yes, it went out. It went out as a best value this year, but for the Department of Public Property, yes.
Okay. And the timeline on response, is that already passed?
We have received, yes, the responses are being evaluated by the selection committee.
Okay. And how did you advertise that?
We advertised it on PHL contracts, which is procurement's e-procurement system, as well as on Contracts Hub. And it was publicly advertised for 30 days.
Okay. Was OEO involved in that process?
Absolutely.
All right. And if you know off the top of your head, the goals, I guess, because we can't use set-asides or mandates.
Right, the participation range.
Yes.
I do not know off the top of my head. We can probably put it in the chat for you in a few minutes, but we can definitely get that to you, the participation range for the triplex.
Yeah, that would be helpful. You know,
sure.
The controversy surrounding the last contract.
Yes.
I want to make sure that we deal with that on the front side, not on the back side.
Okay.
Can you say how many respondents we've got? Not who they were, but just the number that we got. Can you say that?
I can't. Not really. No.
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 Why not?
Well, because they're in the midst of we're still in the midst of an active evaluation and an active RFP. So when the award is announced, the notice of intent to award, at that point, we can divulge how many proposals there were.
Okay.
That'll be coming soon.
All right. I don't necessarily like that answer, but that's the
I
answer.
understand. I understand.
All right. Thank you. Do we have any other members have questions for this witness?
Just point of information.
Here, recognizes Councilman Jones.
That is why that disparity study is important, and to safeguard against lawsuits. The difference between ranges and set-asides are the fact that you looked in an area, let's say the standard metropolitan area of Philadelphia, and said that there were X number of security and maintenance companies in the area that could handle a job that size. And so therefore you safeguard the range by statistical data that says there's an availability of this many companies that you should be able to achieve this goal, this standard. And so that disparity study is the basis by which ranges are determined.
Yes, I understand, Councilman, and I know that we have a annual disparity study that is conducted, but a full disparity study, which I believe is what you're asking about. I cannot speak to whether or not we are, as a city, in the process of or considering engaging in a full-on disparity study.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, I'm gonna let me say this. Let me let you know that there's the likelihood that we'll do a call back for you.
Okay.
This is a very important contract, and want to make sure that every opportunity is presented in this contract. Is this an administration friendly contract, or one that requires a multi-year, i.e., council approval? Or is this one of those 2 years renewable year after year after year, so you don't have to get council authorization?
Yeah, it is a 1+3, so it is essentially a 4-year opportunity. But we have had conversations recently about having it be a longer extended contract. We would have had to come before council prior to the letting of the contract, so we missed that opportunity, but certainly are in conversation with DPP about when this comes around the next time to have it be a longer, more extended opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, you understand. I mean, frankly speaking, from a personal note, I want to have nothing to do with any evaluation or any selection process. but I do think there needs to be more transparency around this whole contractual relationship as it relates to procurement. This 1 year and then this continued renewable, and it was done not by you or your administration, but it was done to basically circumvent council's authority as it relates to having to approve the contract. It's just my personal belief. Having been here for a while, I've seen how this has evolved into such a process, and the fact that you can't even tell me how many people responded, that's of concern. But okay, I understand.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions by members of this witness? If none, thank you very much, Commissioner, and your tenacious team. We really appreciate the work you do.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next up, we have the Office of OIT, our good friends.
Council President.
Yes.
The next witness is Michael Zaccagni, Director of Human Resources, OIT, scheduled for this afternoon.
I'm sorry, mate. I didn't mean to jump over you, sir.
That's okay. If you want to go right to OIT, I'm good.
I know you're waiting with bated breath to testify in front of us. I'm sorry, Mike.
That's not a problem.
Please proceed.
Good morning, President Clark and members of council. You have my written testimony, so I won't take time here to read that today. However, as Stephanie did this morning, and I already did, I do want to thank the council for their continued support in addressing some of the challenges that we have faced over the last several years, which have been many. And most recently, President Clark, you and the Recruitment and Retention Committee and the work that you have done and the recommendations that will be coming from that committee. We do appreciate that support. I would also like to thank the leadership of our team in the Office of Human Resources for their hard work and dedication, especially for work that has been done in promoting health equity among our workforce, investing in employees, though we have to do more, expanding our community outreach for recruitment, getting into the communities, meeting with people in libraries and community organizations, and we can talk more about that, assisting departments with their onboarding challenges, and if you'd like, I can talk a little bit more about the time to hire issues. Though we feel we've made advances, there is still much more to do. With me today is Janine Labletta, Valerie Hosendorf, Marcia Green-Jones, and Ardina Starks, all deputy directors responsible for various functions within the office. We appreciate your support, and I look forward to our discussion today.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Let me get into a couple of that was requested of our team on this side, our folks that deal with this issue. You have your paper enrollment documents, those that are submitted after the 30-day enrollment period through the One Philly electronic submission process are submitted through the CAP enrollment email process. Paper enrollments are completed on a first in, first out basis with little communication to the department. Is there a better way to submit paper enrollment documents and communicate with the departments? And I think
Thank
you know
you.
where this is coming from.
Our health benefits is an extremely important function that we do. I always say, and even though we're not involved with payroll, or responsible for payroll and health benefits, if you're not doing that right, people don't care how strategic you're getting. We did have some capacity issues at the beginning of the year, but what I'm going to actually ask is Marcia Green-Jones, who's our deputy for benefits, who knows this work much better than I, to sort of talk to this issue. Marcia?
Yes, good morning, everyone. I'm happy to be here this morning. Marcia Green-Jones, Deputy Director of Human Resources, responsible for health and welfare. We do have a process. The way One Philly is set up, it only allows a person to actually go into the portal for a 30-day period. After that period, we actually have extended what the federal government requires, which is a 30-day enrollment period. We've actually added on 15 additional days to allow employees to actually enroll a little bit later. So as a consequence of that, we have the paper enrollment process. We clearly articulate what that process is in the enrollment guide, in the eligibility guidelines, and the enrollment guide and the eligibility guidelines are shared not only with the HR community, but with also the employee. So each person eligible for enrollment actually receives all of this information they should at their start as a part of their orientation for employee benefits. So we have looked from time to time about, is there a possibility to change the system? Can the system be rejiggered to allow more than a 30-day window? And the answer to that is no at this time. But the HR community does have that information as well as the employees. So it should be quite transparent to all of those who participate in that process.
Just to add to that, Council President, one of the things that we're also going to do, because we did hear this issue come up. So Stephanie, Marcia, myself, and some other members are actually going to be meeting on this to sort of talk about what else we may be able to do in the way of communication and reaching out. As Marcia said, we do a lot of work in putting together the enrollment guide, but I get it. It's a big guide. Not everybody's going to pay attention to that. So I think we actually have a meeting next week scheduled to sort of more dive into this issue more deeply to see whether or not there are some changes, because we know that this is important and this is a critical piece. We do not want to be late with getting people enrolled, and we don't want to just assume that people know what they're supposed to be doing. The only thing I will add is one of the other challenges right now, some of the issues from the standpoint of how we have the process set and the activities that go on. When we were handing this off between open enrollment, and then we also had the courts come down with an entire new contract, and we got hit with a bunch of things there. So in the beginning of this year, we did have some significant capacity issues. There was a new contract for the court system. They wound up coming into our health plan, and there was a lot of work that had to be done around there. So, but this is on our map. We are planning to meet next week, and we can certainly circle back with this council to talk about what we think we can do differently.
All right, because, we've had like most departments, significant turnover, new employees coming in, and being able to ensure that you have health benefits, and as you referenced, the importance of that is key. So as you all have these conversations, I hope you all can come up with a strategy to have a little more flexibility in terms of being able to accommodate the newness of this all, because these are different times, different challenges that people meet. So hoping that we get some positive feedback, and if you can talk to, as you said, you're going to be talking to the various departments about more communication.
We're going to talk internally about what we can do about our process to address some of these issues that we've seen and what is in our control. And then we will be reaching out. We do talk to departments regularly on our HR manager meetings and so forth, but we'll see what else we can do. And we'll certainly circle back with your office to let you know what we think we can sort of change here or improve.
That would be helpful. Thank you. Recently, the Governor Shapiro's administration made an announcement about altering some of the requirements for employees, and they, with a broad swath, identified literally thousands of positions that didn't necessarily require a college degree. And my understanding that there were some conversations in the city, or there were some movement, and I don't know, maybe prior to the governor doing it, we did something similar. Can you talk to us about that?
Sure.
Particularly given the shortage of employees that we have in the city.
Yes. Thank you for that question. One of the things that we think is critical is that we provide more opportunities for applicants and for residents of the city. We've been looking at not removing degree requirements, but creating alternative pathways to degree requirements. And I think the number for us right now is not the 92% that the state has. I think we're closer to 85% of our workers are in jobs that do not require degrees. And we've changed over the last several years about 100 different job titles. And we continue to use that as a strategy. We changed about 100 different job titles where we included a different pathway so that you can gain experience and qualify for positions within the city that normally would require some type of certification or a degree requirement. We're not done with that. We continue to work on that as we look at our maintenance of our positions, but it is something that has been a strategy for us. And I feel, and we've actually talked about this before, that degree requirement can act as a real barrier for people, especially when you look at what the cost of college and universities are now. And I've been involved in university education for over 30 years. It's an important piece, but it's not necessary for every one of our positions. So we continue to work with departments on trying to push the envelope as to where we can make changes within our job classifications. Again, there's still more that we can do there, but we are working on that, and we've had a number of positions that we have changed.
Thank you. Thank you. Chair recognizes Councilman Harity.
Hello, Council President. Hello, Commissioner. Just have a couple questions. In your professional opinion, how can the Office of Human Resources streamline the job application and onboarding process for new hires? What are the process for internal promotions for current city workers to backfill open positions, and how are those positions advertised? And how are the positions advertised, and do they meet the specific needs of each department? For example, let's say the city is hiring a social worker. How will a social worker be placed in a department?
Okay. If I forget any one of those components, Councilman, if you can remind me.
Yes, sir.
So as to the process and the onboarding process, we have been working on that for some time. Ms. Tipton mentioned about the fact that it takes around 90 days, and what it's looking at for all of our positions right now, we saw a decrease from last year to at least the first 2 quarters of this year from, I think it was like 128 days average last year to like 90 this year. One of the challenges that we and all governments have is that we have a bifurcated system. So when I say that, we have OHR that's responsible for announcing positions, generating a list through some type of assessment process. And even if we do the fastest thing, what we call a training and experience, just looking at sort of the job resume, we still have to do a deep dive because there's so many preferences that we have to check on and get documentation about. Right now, for us to, we announce a position, from the close of that announcement to the time we get an eligible list created, it's probably around 33 days or so. Then that process moves into the department. And the departments now have to go through an interview process and talk to however many candidates that is certified out to them. So that's why it's always going to be a little bit of a struggle. One of the things that we've tried to do is really work with departments. We did a very intensive interview training program over the last year. I mentioned Ardina Stark. She works with departments regularly trying to get names to candidates where we can get the entire list out to a department, even if there's a certification rule. We do that. And one of the other things I do want to add to our current process now is we try to anticipate. So we try not to react. So we meet with departments regularly to develop a workforce plan so that they anticipate what their needs are. And we try to have those positions in line. The best one I can mention is probably laborers. That's not a difficult list for us to generate. It's a random selection. It's a lottery. People feel that they've really hit the lottery when they get called for this. And what we try to do is have that list generated. As the old list expires, the new list is right there, so that Streets Department is the main user of that we can do that. That doesn't happen with everything. We had about, I think we're doing close to, on projection, 470 eligible lists. And I think we had over 80 that were added on out of that 470 or so. Don't quote me on the numbers, but that's about what it is. So these are lists that departments come to us afterwards and say, hey, something happened. We need this now. So that adds to some of the challenges that we have. We work very closely with departments from the standpoint of what their needs are. And we also work closely with departments from the standpoint of recruitment. Up until last year, the Office of Human Resources did not have dedicated staff for recruitment. We relied primarily on departments, and it's like with anything else. Departments that have lots of funding can do more. Water department can do more. Streets may be able to do a little bit more. Airport, before the pandemic, could do more. So we do work with those. And Janine's group has done a lot on recruitment. They've been out to over 40 colleges. As I mentioned, we've built a partnership with local libraries. They're regularly out there. If you want to hear about that, I can pass that on, but this is your time. And we also work with community organizations, not only to recruit people, but also to help people navigate our hiring system. So the other piece too is how can we make this even better? We're looking at our current applicant tracking system to see either what changes we can make to that to make it better, i.e. texting. Our current system doesn't do that. We're looking at an add-on right now as to how we could do that. Or if need be, we'll look towards a new system. So we do have funding that we requested that's in our budget for next fiscal year to look at our applicant tracking system, either to improve it or to replace it. That's a big piece too. And as I mentioned earlier, the other thing that we do from a recruitment standpoint, and I know I may be going off target a little bit, but I think they're connected, is we are trying to leverage a lot of different areas to get out and to contact candidates and applicants so that we can reach the broadest piece. The last question that you had, I'm having trouble remembering that.
It was held positions advertised, and do they meet specific needs of each department? For example, if you're hiring a social worker, how will that social worker be placed in a department?
So all of our job descriptions, whenever we create a new one or modify a current one, we don't do it without subject matter experts from the departments. So we're not sitting down here creating a job specification. So if a department feels that the competencies and skills are not meeting what they need, they'll engage with us and we'll work with that department to review the job description so that we come up with something that identifies the core skills and competencies that they need that supports their operational needs. I've spent most of my life in an operating department, so I understand the challenges that they have, and we understand them. And our hiring services team does a really good job of working with departments and modifying job specifications as needed. And they really drive a lot of this.
Okay. Thank you. I'm good with that.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilman. Chair recognizes Councilwoman Gilmore Richardson.
All right, thank you. Thank you so much, Council President, and thank you, Mr. Zaccagni. And first, I wanted to thank you, CP, for the opportunity to be appointed to the Special Committee for Municipal Hiring and Retention. We've had the opportunity to continue to work with our OHR professionals, in addition to the great work that we all have been doing over the last couple of years. So I wanted to say thank you for that opportunity because I've certainly learned so much. And in addition to that, I wanted to thank OHR for their work over the past few years, working together on creating pipelines and pathways for our young people and for those who would like the opportunity to reskill and upskill and move into a different career path. So I'll start with just a couple of quick questions. One is around the sort of structure of OHR. If you could talk about the organizational structure of your department, all the reporting structures and like sort of how your department is put together.
So when I think of structure, I think of beyond the Office of Human Resources. So we have set divisions that are dealing with hiring services, employee benefits, and so forth. But the city overall has, in today's world, an unusual structure for its HR processes. So the HR units within the departments report directly to the department head. So whether it's commissioner or so forth, that's who they report to. Now, they have a lot of partnerships with us. We have a lot of interaction with them, but there's no dotted line or solid line to sort of HR. And we also have HR going on in a number of different places. For example, in HR&T, in Department of Labor, even a little bit, you could argue, in sort of the DEI realm, though what you're seeing in today's world is a lot of DEI positions are now sort of standing up on their own and reporting to the agency head. But that's not really true about HR. When you look at HR in many organizations, there's at least a federated system where even if you're decentralized, you still have some connection to the central agency. There are a lot of positions currently in HR across departments. I think the last time I looked, there was 400, but unfortunately, I can't see the vacancies that exist within that group through Oracle. So there could be a lot of benefits gained if we sat down and really rethought how that structure was. So we've been decentralized since I've been here, and I'm not going to say how long that's been, but it's been that way for a long time. And departments, and I get it, I was in the streets department for 27 years, revenue for several years. Departments like to have sort of that autonomy, and they feel safe with that. But I think in today's world, we really do have to give some time to rethinking what that looks like.
And thank you for that response. My concern is that so many people say, and believe that things will change when one leader changes. I am of the belief that sort of the organizational structure of OHR needs to be addressed relative to our ability to address not only the sort of hiring issues that we have, which a ton of other municipalities are sort of dealing with the same thing, but because we're not talking to each other sort of from an interagency perspective, it's very difficult for the overall OHR department to really have a true understanding of what's happening on a granular level within departments across city government. So one thing I will ask is, as you all probably at this point in time, is April, are sort of preparing the transition reports for the next administration, will you be able to put in a set of recommendations relative to an increased reporting structure for departmental OHR groups to at least have some type of dotted line and structure into the overall OHR? Because, as you said, you can't even see the vacancies at Oracle. And so you really don't have a true picture of what's happening sort of from an overall citywide perspective for all of the departments, which you should be able to see as the overall director of OHR. So I just wanted to put that out there because you all know that I have relative concern about why the employee relations unit is not under OHR. That is not customary at all. That just does not happen. I worked in human resources before I came to city government. I was a staffing coordinator. I understand HR very well, took courses in grad school. That it's really something wrong with that structure, and it needs to be addressed. So I wanted to just get that on the record before I move forward with my other questions. All right, thank you. I wanted to circle back to the legislation that you all know I deeply care about, the first bill and resolution that I introduced upon entering council, which was providing our CTE graduates with a point preference when they apply for city employment. And I think I was just a little bit ahead of the curve, I'll say, because we now really do need that type of legislation and policy in place to really help us deal with the 1 in 5 vacancies that we have in city government, but also recognizing that so many of our employees will be eligible for retirement over the next 5 years. So can you just provide us with an update on sort of the regulations around the CTE point preference and how you all are planning to promote the preference amongst our young people, and particularly in the CTE programs in the school district?
Yes, I believe we do have a regulation. We shared that with your office. I'm going to ask Janine Labletta to talk a little bit about exactly where that is. Janine?
And
Yes,
before
hi.
Janine begins, hi Janine, before she begins, I just want to give you kudos for how you have worked very closely with my office, working with the school district. We've done several seminars together for young people. You all have worked to change the specifications for a number of the entry-level positions so that we can ensure our young people are going directly into those jobs. So I do want to say thank you for that very important work. I do recognize it, and it's important.
Council member, for that acknowledgement. We look forward to the continued collaboration with you and other council members on how we can reach your constituents interested in city careers. In short, the regulation you proposed has been approved by Civil Service, and it will be effective. So we're just waiting for a finalization through the administrative board process. It will be effective for lists established after May 1st, and we appreciate that time period to really get together and test it in our system and make sure we can implement and award these points effectively to CTE graduates.
Okay, and so I'll want to work with you all relative to getting the word out with all the CTE teachers. I do believe they should get some communication in writing directly from the city of Philadelphia. There are a certain subset of teachers, so we should be able to reach them directly, and then we can send it out to the principals of those schools as well. Because, we have the 4 schools and then the 130 plus programs. And so we want to be sure that all of those teachers get that information directly by May 1st, so that they know what to expect and what to tell their young people. And then if we could keep that database and send them the list that we typically receive. Back in the day in city government, we would get the paper list delivered to our offices every week or every other week. If we could have that either virtually sent and shared or mailed to each of those schools, that would be most helpful. I heard the bell. I will respect the clock. I will come back on the second round. But I also see Marsha Green Jones, and I want to thank you for your long-time service in city government, always answering the call and being responsive. So thank you very much. I'll come back on the second round, Mr. President.
Thank you for those kind words, Councilwoman.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Chair recognizes. Hey, Councilman Jones, did you have a comment or a question? Were you trying to comment on?
I had a comment. Yeah, I had a comment, basically. I wanted to thank you and Councilwoman for the special committee on hiring. One of the sites what I wanted to talk about, Member Richardson, was that way back in the day, we talked about the school to prison pipeline, but we also then said it needed to evolve to a school to paycheck pipeline. And what I'm encouraged about is if you look at departments like fleet management, 1/3 of their workforce comes from a CTE school, Randolph.
Right.
So it can work is what I'm trying to emphasize, and I'm so very glad that you are on it like a laser beam, and as a former council person would say. But I think it will have an impact on gun violence. I really do. If you look at some of the departments, like the water department, some of those guys I knew growing up, Prez, and but for that job, things would have turned out really different. So thank you for that. And thank you to the people that are involved in that committee. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilman. Chair recognizes Councilwoman Lozada.
Yeah, thank you, Council President. Councilman Jones just mentioned a tidbit about what I was interested in, and so my question is, I want to make sure that people understand I'm not against civil service tests at all. I'm not against civil service workers at all. My question is, there are so many vacancies. There are so many individuals in our community that are just not test takers. They don't do well test taking, but they are amazing people committed to wanting to work and wanting to get involved in the city's workforce. But they can't take tests well. And so have we, over the last few years, looked at our job descriptions, looked at the requirements for these particular positions that currently require a civil service test that can potentially not be on that civil service test list, but that we can offer to some of these guys that are re-entering into our communities and really want to do the right thing.
Thank you for that question. That's an important point, and I may ask Janine Lebletta to talk a little bit about this also, but it is something that we're looking at, that we have continued to look at. We've moved a lot of what you would call your standard testing to training and experience, or at least a number of them. It is something that we look at to see whether or not we can, instead of doing a written, very standardized test, because I also think we have to be careful with those, to what we call training experience, which is basically looking at your resume, your training, the experience that you have. And even with the test that we currently still have, we have somebody on board, an outside vendor, that is looking through both our job descriptions and our testing process to make sure that we don't have any implicit bias built into those. We didn't have a lot of funding this year. That funding is increased for next year. So we're going to continue that project and that work so that where we think we still must give a sort of standardized assessment, that at least we're doing it in such a way that has as little impact. But I agree with you also from the standpoint of the standardized testing. Again, I've been in education for a long time as well as this job, and we do look at where we can make changes. Janine, did you want to add anything to that?
Yes, I would add, especially as we move to online virtual testing, we remain very available to our candidates to still come to the municipal building to take it if they don't have a computer or device. And we, yes, council member, we look at by groups who is applying for our exams, who is approved, who is successful on our exams, and we're administering more and more training and experience evaluation, which is not a competitive assessment, which allows for those candidates to make it to the interview process and shine and hopefully obtain a city job if that's their goal.
Awesome. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Nothing more, Council President.
Council President?
Sorry about that. People walking in and out. Chair recognizes Councilwoman Gilmore Richardson for round two.
Wow, that was quick. Thank you. Thank you, Council President. I wanted to go back to something you mentioned in your testimony, Mrs. Zacagney, relative to the department hiring a workforce development officer, someone who's focusing on upskilling our workers, but particularly in the skilled trades. So who is the workforce development officer? What is their portfolio, and how is their work being supported through all of the city departments and not just specifically out of OHR? And then if you could just provide additional information on the trades upskilling initiative.
Yeah, I'm going to ask Val Hosendorf to jump in and talk about that because she's helping head that up, and I'd like you to hear from Val. Val, you can introduce Natasha. I know she's not on, though.
Okay, I think I'm on. Good morning, council member. Good morning, everyone. Valerie Hosendorf, one of the deputy directors in the Office of Human Resources. So our Director of Staff Development has been with us for just a couple months. Her name is Natasha Brown, and she comes to us with a lot of experience in workforce development. She also is very educated. I think she worked at Temple. I don't have her resume in front of us, but I can definitely get it to you if you need be. But her role is going to be, this position was designed to focus on our current employees, to coordinate, evaluate, and develop programs designed to provide opportunities for current employees to develop and improve their job readiness skills. And so we're very connected and partner with the bipartisan infrastructure legislation as well. So she's a part of that infrastructure team and committee. But she's also looking to develop a pilot so that we can develop a, develop a selection process to reach out to some of our current employees in our entry-level positions, specifically our trades positions, and put together a program so that we can bring in the training or certification processes so that these folks can participate, get their certifications, and we can basically grow our own. So we're going to start with a pilot, and maybe we work with Janine to look at some of the opportunities can be like a short win, something that we can do within a few months, but then we're going to also look at some of our other hard to fill and critical positions and apply that model as we continue to grow our own in specific positions.
Thank you. So I'm just taking notes on what you're saying. So how many people do you anticipate you'll be able to get into the initial phase of the pilot program? How much do you believe it will cost the department, and has that money already been allocated, or is that a part of, I guess, what your ask is for this cycle? And when do you anticipate, I guess, the additional work to begin, like to actually start?
Thank you. So Natasha's already starting to put together some templates in the process in the program, but we do have money for a contract. We have an RFP that we're just posting for a workforce development partner to partner with us to do the certification. And I believe that contract is for $260,000. I think, Mike, is that right?
Yes.
So let me ask you a question. I apologize for the interruption, but is there any way that we could work with our Workforce Investment Board to do that work so that we save that money?
Gladly have a discussion about that.
I'd love to talk about that, yes.
One of the other things that we've sort of charged Natasha with is to really reach out to agencies as well as departments to see where we can leverage things that are currently going on. This is the first time that we've had sort of a central focus or capacity to do that central focus. So you have some very good programs. Councilman Jones mentioned Fleet. We have Future Track and Streets. You have the water apprenticeship programs. So where we can sort of look at those programs and really leverage whatever they're doing. And if there's other options, Councilman Gilmer Richardson, what we were looking at was really making sure that we had the skill sets, because we just don't have the capacity to sort of do this training ourselves. So if there are other options, we can certainly talk about that.
I understand, but when I listen to this as someone who has been deeply involved with this work for 3 years, and I hear that we've hired a workforce professional, now we're going to do an RFP for another $250,000 plus $10,000 to do this work, when we have a Workforce Investment Board and we have a Workforce Professionals Alliance through Commerce. They're tasked with, and we've done RFPs through Commerce as far as workforce development organizations and operations as well. So I'm just, from what I'm hearing initially, I'm just being honest, is that I feel like I hear a lot of money going out, but I don't see when it's going to start, how many people, which departments. And so we have a WPA through Commerce. And we have the Workforce Investment Board via Philadelphia Works, and they received a ton of federal money to do the work that you are describing in the city of Philadelphia, and a lot of it is centered around the trades because it's one of the occupations that's on the high demand occupation list for the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. So to me, I hear we can save $260,000. Somebody can pick up the phone and contact Philadelphia Works and call the WPA, Workforce Professionals Alliance with Commerce, and we could save that $260,000, and maybe we can help get more people upskilled with that $260,000. Just a thought.
Yes, if we're able, we'll certainly reach out to your office. The $260,000 was going to go to specific training. It wasn't going to go into planning. So it would be actually doing the work of, if, for example, we were doing more automotive mechanics, even though that I'm using that just as an example, they would be providing that training. We're not asking them to come in and put a program together for us. It did this many years ago, and we partnered with the school district, and actually at that time they were able to do it without charging us anything. And we had people go there for a week, get training in automotive skills. This is a really long time ago. And then they come back and they work for a week. And this was before the centralization of Fleet. And what we got out of that was a half a dozen auto mechanics. We were a small department, and they were all diverse, and none of our mechanics were diverse. So wherever we can leverage, and what we're looking for is the people who can actually do the training so that we can say, okay, here are a dozen people We wanted to get them trained in HVAC mechanics, in automotive technicians, in carpentry. And we're currently looking internally to see where we want to sort of dedicate that. And if we need those resources, it would have to be dedicated for support of the infrastructure money, because that's sort of how we sold at least getting the pilot going. But we'll reach out and we'll talk some more offline and really get down deep into this then.
Okay, I heard the bell, so I'll come back on the next round. Thank you, Council President.
President is taking a break, and if you would like, you're the last member to ask questions. If you'd like to do that now, you can take up your third round.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. Appreciate the latitude. I will continue with the questions that I have, but I was looking through the testimony, and I saw on page 12 that there was $190,000 allocated for fiscal year 23 for a workforce development contract with $140,000 in estimated actual obligations, but it still says the vendor is to be determined. So could you just explain the goals of the contract and the delay in the actual, I guess, promulgating of the contract, and then why there's no allocation for 24 for that?
It's actually the same contract. We got a late start on that. We didn't get Natasha on board till late. That's why we're not going to get it. I've talked to budget about how we make the change between this year and next year. So it's all the same thing.
Okay, and then it'll be,
we don't have two pots of money.
Got you. Okay, because that was, I kind of read through everything, so it just was confusing to me. And so I guess you'll get back to us based on the additional conversation we have about that. And from what I hear you saying, that if it was something that you still have to move forward with, it would kind of be like an intra-office sort of transfer that you all be able to do based on, I guess, dollars that you already have.
It's going to be dependent upon, it's probably going to be a transfer ordinance come next year to give us the additional money. But I've talked to budget already about it.
Okay, I was just trying to put the pieces together based on what I had. My colleagues asked about the sort of time to hire, and we know the work that we're seeking to do with the special committee on municipal hiring and retention. But what I wanted to also focus on around retention is if you could share some of the information about the assessment of the key benchmark positions in our compensation plan. What have been sort of the outcomes, or do you know when we'll get the results from that?
So we just made a selection. That's now going through to establish that contract. So what I can do is ask Janine to talk a little bit more about that. I believe it's a 16-week process once we get the contract in place. Janine, do you want to add anything to that?
No, that's correct. Unfortunately, we don't have any outcomes for today for you.
Okay, if you could just keep us updated on that, that would be exceedingly helpful. And I think it's one for health benefits as well. Will there be one for health benefits?
Actually, we have some money for health benefits, and we have money for a data warehouse that will help us better identify where we have gaps in our coverage. And I'm going to ask Marcia Green-Jones to talk very quickly about some of the work that she's done with some outside agencies to also help us build some strategies to impact our benefit plans, especially under the cap. Marcia?
Thank you, Mike. So some of the things that we've been working on recently to really identify where we have gaps in care and also meet people where they are, our employees, because when we think about our employees, they're part of our community. If our employees are well, our community will be well. So some of the things that we've been doing is we worked on a collaborative project with the CDC. We actually have been working with them for the last 18 months to evaluate our healthcare plans to understand where we are from a culture of health perspective. So they've evaluated us. We got the final standings in terms of our evaluation in the fall of last year. So now we're working with our consultants to actually understand where we can actually build on some of the things that we have in place. So some of the areas of opportunity we have identified are the data, We need some our data information in terms of that Mike just talked about in terms of the data warehouse. They've evaluated us on our communication, how we communicate to employees. So there were 50 pillars that we were evaluated on. There were several companies within the city of Philadelphia, who participated in this study as well. And so we're going to be focusing with our providers. That means the IBCs of the world, the CVS, the United Concordia. All of our vendors actually will be working with us in a collaborative way to understand what we can do better and how can we ensure healthy outcomes for our employees. On the same vein, we also had a vendor summit, and this is about health equity, because we're constantly looking at opportunities to improve health outcomes. So we had a vendor summit with all 10 providers at the same time, and we gave them an actual agenda we wanted them each to speak about. And one of the ideas in the actual agenda, they had to tell us what they were doing from a health equity perspective, how they were doing it, when they were doing it, and then we had the opportunity to question them. We've had our first meetings. We started this project in August. We've had several meetings in the fall. We had another meeting with providers in February. So now our next steps are to look at the data again, call in certain providers. We've called in IBC, CVS, and Active Health, who's our wellness provider, to work with us to understand areas of opportunity. In addition to that, we launched On the GOGA, which is a which is a well-being platform. And what that does, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, employees can actually access information, whether it's participating in a live stream where they can ask questions of a actual coach, whether it's going to a library to research information, whether it's about health and nutrition. We've rolled this program out to employees within the CAP program. So we're constantly looking for opportunities to improve the health outcomes. And one thing I want to toot our own horn a little bit is that we've had a lot of success, and that success is built based upon our employees' trust in us as a benefits provider. Our employees have participated in our wellness programs, and as a consequence, we have not increased employees' contributions since 2013. And I don't think many companies and organizations can say that we've maintained the level of coverage. We haven't changed. We've increased and maintained that same cost differential.
Sure. Well, I heard the bell, but I do want to thank you for your response and for your great work, for the work that your team has been doing. You know, we all have to participate in the health equity work in order to get the discount for the benefits, and we all do that and utilize the coaching. I'm glad to hear that you do bring in the vendors and the providers, because I will tell you that with some of the post-COVID healthcare prescription challenges relative to being able to receive certain prescriptions, and particularly an issue that impacts a lot of our young people in the city, which is asthma. It's been very difficult to get asthma medication as of late, and because some city employees have to use a certain pharmacy in order to get their prescriptions, it has been very difficult. We have had to go far and wide to get the asthma medication because we can't go to the pharmacy across the street, which is the competitor, to get the medication. So I'm glad to hear that you all are meeting with the vendors and just trying to ensure that you're having regular communication with them and being in contact with them. And I know that as a part of what you all are doing is keeping our cost savings low. But when we do get to points where, you know, there's challenges for whatever reasons in the market, I think that's when it comes into play where, you know, if we had the option to go to another pharmacy, we would, so that we could get the medication that we need. But I think everybody's happy with the prices staying level for the past 10 years. So I just wanted to put that out there as well. And just thank you again for the really robust work. And I took a bunch of notes of what you all have been doing, and particularly with that long-term project with the CDC, because I know that pays dividends for the city in order for us to get our package and our benefits package. So I just wanted to put that on the record. I just have one quick question because I don't see anyone else in the chat. Mrs. Acagni, you brought this up earlier relative to DEI and how some organizations are now doing DEI where it's a whole department that sort of has a reporting structure directly into the leadership of the organization. Do we have a DEI consultant? Do we have a DEI consultant?
I would defer to the Mayor's Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, but I see Marissa just jumped up.
Hey, Marissa.
Hey, I'm Marissa Waxman, Budget Director, last budget hearing. The city does have a DEI consultant. We use a firm called Equity and Results. In FY23, you will see them in the mayor's office budget, and I believe the intention for FY24, and possibly, I think that actually may be up for renewal, probably be in finance. A lot of the work has been the budgeting for equity, but they've done a number of other initiatives citywide. So there is a firm that we have been using and funding expected for FY24 for that.
May you say their name again? I'm sorry.
Equity and Results.
Equity and Results. Okay, because I thought I saw something in the detail about a diversity consultant via evaluation. What is that?
Are you referring to our budget?
Right. I was trying to understand how all of that works. That's why I was asking.
That was what I mentioned. We had somebody on board looking at our job descriptions and also our testing process to make sure there's no implicit bias built into it. So it's a very focused, narrowed work that they're doing. The Mayor's Office of Diversity and Inclusion also has gone through just about every department now and have built cohorts around strategies to impact diversity, not only internal, but also with our external facing stakeholders. So I would talk to that office. They're the ones that are sort of heading that up. But the money that you saw in there is very specific, directed at what I had talked about before with the job descriptions and the testing processes.
I understand. Okay, so is that just one person, or is that like a firm or a company?
Janine?
Yes, that is a women-owned firm. Yep.
Okay, it's a women-owned firm?
Yes.
Okay, but is it one person? Because I see the value is $75,350. Is it just one?
It's one firm. They are multiple. I think there's three, like a research analyst and then the head doctorate consultant. We're only focusing on 9 or so titles. That's why the contract is so low.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, 9 titles. You had a research analyst and then the head of, the head of the firm. And then what's the diversity of those individuals?
The research associate is a female of color. The head researcher, I don't know that she's the owner of the firm, council member, is a white female.
Okay, and they're looking into implicit bias.
Yes, at our exam process, instrument, and then the job requirements.
Okay, so you said a white female, I guess, is the researcher, and then the research analyst is, you said, a woman of color. Do you know her ethnicity?
She's an African American female.
Okay.
And I don't know if she's actually still there as of today, so I don't want to provide any wrong information. We can follow up.
Okay, you can just send it to me on the back end, because I think it's important too when we do that kind of granular work, that you really have a good diversity of individual working on that. And then I'll close out with this, and then I'll be done, so I don't have to submit any questions for the record. Just going back to the employee relations unit, and you know that I talked about this with being sort of housed under the Office of Labor. I just wanted to know, does OHR, I guess centrally in city government, have a role when someone has an EEO complaint? Like, are you all involved with that process at all?
It really depends on what happens. So, for example, Val Hosendorf is sort of our strategic partner. So a department may call her up and say, we're having some issues around this. It may touch upon things such as EEO, but if it's an actual complaint and it comes into us, we will reach out to the Office of Labor to let them know so that ERU can handle it. They actually have a online reporting tool also in case someone doesn't want to say something in person, that they can file a complaint. But what we try to do with them is have very good conversations. We've been through a several-month process right now in trying to build better communications between these diverse offices when it comes to issues such as EEO and affirmative action, especially complaints, so that we all better know what our roles are and that we can communicate that better to every one of our stakeholders. So we've been working on that diligently. The Office of the Chief Administrative Officer has been leading that effort. They've been facilitating that process, and we've been meeting with the Office of Labor, ourselves, CAO, and DE&I on building those better connections, and so that we have a better idea of what everybody's role is.
Okay, and I would say,
I'm sorry, the ERU is responsible for investigating those complaints.
sure. Just lastly, I just wanted to mention this, that I think the challenge and the concern with ERU is that, as you stated, if someone has a complaint of someone in a leadership position, and you have to hear from the department as OHR, it's really no opportunity outside of that, I guess, online portal for the report to about the potential person in leadership to above them. Meaning, if it was a centralized place for those complaints to go to in a centralized OHR unit, you don't have to depend on the person that may be involved with the incident to report it to OHR from the department perspective. I just think we need a better reporting process for EEO complaints as a whole, because if it's against someone in leadership, it's really not a lot of recourse for a city employee. Because typically we would depend on a department to put forth the complaint.
Yeah, I think they do try to sort of segment off so that if an employee has a complaint about a leadership, that they don't. And we have a number of different places people could go to. They can come to HR, they can go to ERU, the new ombudsman position that we just brought on. So what we try to do is we create, like any organization, multiple pathways for people to raise these issues if they feel uncomfortable with one pathway. Perhaps they don't want to go to labor. Perhaps they don't want to come to OHR. It was one of the reasons why we also brought on this person who would be an ombudsman also, so that there would be another sort of less formal process to have some of these issues addressed.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. And again, I just want to thank you all for your great work. Janine, you have just been stellar with those positions and sort of transferring them to ensure that we're creating that pipeline. If you could just provide that list so we could share with all the members of council so they know, how many positions you all have transitioned over the last year or so that the job specs align with young people who will graduate from a CTE program, that would be exceedingly helpful, because I think that is really transformative and important work, and just all the work that you all have been doing. I'm so appreciative. Just wanted to get everything on the record to ensure that we're being of best service, not only to the city, but to our employees. And when you can, if you could just get us the number of our current full strength, and if it could just be broken down by each department, that would be helpful as we go through the budget process.
I actually sent you that by email after our discussion the other day.
Awesome.
It's in the quarterly manager's report every quarter. So the budget office actually has it. Marissa can talk to it too, but I sent you the link to the quarterly manager's report so that you can see that.
Right. Thank you. That was all. That was a quick turnaround. Thank you.
Okay.
All right. Have a good day.
Just as a point of information, Member Gilmore Richardson, the employee who has a grievance, also external to the city, can go to the Philadelphia Human Relations
Commission. Yes.
The Pennsylvania Human Relations Commission, and then there's a federal door, EEOC, I believe it is. So they have three different layers. And in the past, one case comes to mind involving members of the police department. They went to 2 of the 3 doors, but didn't go through the third one and could have received just compensation in greater amounts. So we need to educate workers that they do have those options as well. All right?
Thank you.
So with that, I see no other questions for this panel. And so we will stand at recess until 1:30, where we will reconvene. Thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.